Hi everybody, and welcome to another exciting Creepypasta Friday. Today I have an exciting news story to share with you guys. This is from creepypasta.com, and the story is called Simply Just Love. And there's no author, so I have no one to credit for you guys. But if you know who wrote this, maybe leave it in the description down below. But I'm gonna go ahead and get started. This is not meant to scare anyone. Calling it a creepy story would be a bit of an insult because it isn't one. This is an expression of gratitude toward a friend who was always there for me. He watched over me as I was growing up and was the best friend any kid could have had. Even if I didn't recognize it at the time, he was always there, even though I couldn't see him, and he was always acting in my best interest, even if I couldn't understand. I like to take some time to share with you our story, because if you're lucky, you might have a friend like this too. I think I should let you know. I'm going to read you his first letter. In May of 2010, I bought a new computer and took my old one to the shop to have everything backed up. I had brought the new computer home and had begun restoring my files from the portable hard drive and reinstalling programs when I noticed that there was a file in the miscellaneous folder that the shop technician had created for files with no other place. It was called happybirthdaybaby.txt. Initially, I thought it was a message my mom had written for me that I'd never read as intended, but I opened it and this is what I found. You might find this one day, and I'm not great at this computer stuff, but I'd watched you tinkering with this machine lately, and I think I know how to save this so that you'll find it. Seeing as it's time for me to go, I wanted to leave you this little last message. I know you never met your father, but to me, he was Colonel Marcus Andrew Stadfield, as I'm sure your mother told you. He was a good man, one with the pride of a lion, the strength of a bear, and the heart of pure gold. Truth is, I was almost like his son long before you were born. I was second in command and served with him for 3 years. I watched as your mother wept when she heard the news, her belly swollen with your soon-to-be debut into this world, and I stayed with her every second of every day. That was until the day you came into this world. Then my focus shifted to you. I watched as they cleaned you and handed you to your mother, and she seemed to look right at you with a knowing eye as I stood over the both of you. It was as if she had known all along that I'd be watching you. I watched you grow, and I remember everything, even the things you don't. You always were such a happy baby. You had seemed to have inherited your father's sense of humor. When you were getting to be 4 months old, you would do just about anything to hinder your mother's attempts at changing you. Laughing all the while, you were a wild one at heart, just as you are today. Just like Marcus. When you were about 6 months old, we would play all the time. We had one game in particular where I would grab your toes and tickle your belly. You loved it. Though when your mother came in, I'd have to stop, and it always perplexed her as to why you'd abruptly start crying. After a while, she seemed to think you didn't like her, which is when I realized I had to back away some. When you were 1 year old, you seemed to develop a sixth sense for me. Although you couldn't really see me so much, or so well anymore, you knew I was there. I couldn't play with you as much as before, because I knew it would only hurt you in the long run, but I always kept guard. I knew you remembered seeing me because you had a way of testing my presence. You'd throw your toys into the corner where I stood, and then wait to see if I would play with them. Now I know you won't remember this, but once you threw a bear and a rag doll at me, and because your mother was busy in the kitchen making dinner, I kept you entertained by putting on a little show. It was nothing special. I just made them dance a little. You were laughing loudly, and your mom came in to see what was so funny. But when she saw, she wasn't laughing. I bet you could mention the bear and the rag doll dance even today, and the color would run right out of her cheeks. But do me a favor, and don't. I think it would be kinder to ask if you even ever threw the toys into the corner. That isn't quite as bad of memory for her as the dancing is. Do you remember your first word? I do. It was love. Your mother made damn sure you knew just how much you were cherished by her. Every moment of every day. And she would always say, "Love you, baby." I remember you tugged at my heartstrings something awful once. When your mother was changing you in the bathroom this one time, you seemed to have caught my reflection in the mirror behind her, and you pointed and said, "Love," well, more of a "wove," but your mother knew. And she laughed and affirmed it. It was your only word for a time, but as I walked out of the reflection, you started getting restless, and I knew again that I had to be more stealthy. You were growing more and more every day now, and I couldn't afford to break my promise to your father, which is why I would have to retreat yet again. I broke the rules many times to protect you, for that promise to your father was everything to me. I remember when you were 3 and had mastered walking. You were a regular little scout. You could never keep still. Those little legs had opened up a whole new world to you, and you weren't shy at all about exploring it. One day, you were with your mother in the market, and a lady with a shiny purse caught your eye. You went running after her, just as another shopper was running with her trolley in front of her, coming the other way. She didn't spot you, and because you were running after the purse, you didn't see her either. Breaking the rules was not allowed, but allowing you to get hurt wasn't permissible either. By the time you noticed her, it was too late, and you fell to your bottom before you could scamper off into her trolley. Left without any other option, I sent that trolley flying into the side of a freezer. As it crashed, the woman screamed bloody murder. A man in a uniform," she screamed. You simply giggled as the crowd gathered and your mother came running. When she found you at the scene, you were safe and sound, and you pointed to the trolley that had smashed the freezer window. You know what you said to her then? "Love, Mommy." I was hiding by then, embarrassed to have created such a scene, though I have to admit, I was laughing on the inside. As you grew and became more aware, so did I, and I finally knew when I could and couldn't intervene. Doing too much would hurt the both of us, so I chose my moments carefully. You were a smart kid, just like your father, and most of the time knew how to handle any and every situation. If there was an option, you took it. Though I slipped up a few times as you were growing up, I do think I did well to keep an eye on you. It was just the little things to make your life a bit easier. Things you probably won't remember, like putting your piano music sheets into your bag at night, turning off your television when you fell asleep, pulling the sheets over you on the colder nights, sorting your drawers, setting your alarm clock, closing your windows and doors. You caught me doing one or two of these things a few times, and I want to take the time now to apologize for scaring you. This one time, you were doing your homework and fell asleep at your desk, so I filled in all the answers for your math quiz. You'd made such a fuss to your mother earlier about how strict the teacher was about your homework, and I knew you knew the answers anyways. But you suspected more than ever when you woke up and found the whole half a sheet you had left incomplete was done. You were older and had forgotten that we were friends. Things you saw in the media about ghosts scared you, and you had every right to be afraid. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I never meant to make you cry. If I had only ever taken a little extra care, you'd never have known. I just wanted to keep you safe and happy. As you matured, you began to take form as a little lady, and as such, you began to know the evil of men. Though you had your wits about you, you were always taking stupid risks, and watching over you became a little more of a worry for me. Gradually, I had to expose myself more and more. Most memorably, the night the no-good boy you brought home started putting the moves on you. Your mother was at work. He was only after one thing, and although I know it wasn't my place to choose for you, you were still only a baby girl, just 15 years old. As he got on top of you and started undressing you, took off his top and began whispering those sweet nothings, your face said it all. You were scared, and when you told him to stop, and he wouldn't, and when you pushed him away, and he got angry, when he struck you and finally tried to put his hand up your skirt, and all the evil I kept inside of me broke free at that moment and was something I couldn't control. My rage boiled over as I began to growl, the lights flickering, the TV volume raising, the doors and windows crashing open and shut. The keys on your piano began to rattle with your father's roar. I yelled, "Get out of the house, boy." He ran out of that room, and you tried to follow, but I slammed that door in your face and wouldn't let the handle go until your mother pulled into the driveway. I'm so sorry, kid. That whole thing traumatized you for a while. You became more frightened of me than ever, having such an experience. I knew from then on, in spite of how much I loved you, we could never be friends, not even after what I had done. Some nights you used to sit awake late into the evening, watching for me, and I'd have to sit in the darkest corner, looking right back at you, unable to reassure you that I wasn't there to cause you harm. You used to scream, "I hate you, get out, leave me alone," and just as you used to do as a toddler, you would throw things into my corner, only instead of toys for me to play with, this time it was heavy books, CD cases, anything you get your hands on to get me to move. You used to sit in your bed, watching the corner. I always felt terrible about what I did. I'd almost broken that promise to your father, but more importantly, I'd almost broken the personal promise I'd made to you. It was like that until the night you tried to make peace with me. The night you sat up in your bed and you said, "If you're here, I'm sorry. You're only trying to stop him." I wanted to say something, but I couldn't, even as you shuffled around nervously and called, "You're here, right? Could you show me a sign?" I wanted so badly to show you something. Anything. I was there to show I was there, and that I'd heard that, but feared that you would lose it if I did. I kept silent and just nodded in that dark corner where you couldn't see me. You have to know, I was never mad at you. You were just a little girl, and that little prick tipped me over the edge. Promise me you'll never do anything like that again, won't you? It's your 18th birthday today, which is exactly why I'm writing this to you. I want to wish you a happy birthday. I'm sure your dad's getting sick of keeping that bar stool open for me. Live a good life. Try not to forget about me. I know you turned out great. Your father would be so proud of you. This letter is my present to you. And don't you worry about the spooky corner anymore. My final order is complete. I don't know about you, but I think this trooper deserves a drink. You sure were a handful. If you find this one day, try calling out to me. Take care, be safe, and live a happy life. Love, Lieutenant Ashley Gilchrist. P.S. If you call out my name, call me what you used to call me as a kid. That always got me to come running. I was gobsmacked when I read this letter. Everything finally made sense. All the things that happened when I was growing up. I'd always thought that I was seeing things until that one day my ex-boyfriend almost raped me. I'll be sure to admit that I was scared of him, but I didn't understand what he was, why he was there, or what he was after. But now I see that I had it all wrong. A few days after reading the letter, I asked my mom a few questions about the spooky things that had happened when I was growing up. She was very nonchalant about the whole thing, until I mentioned what happened in the market. There she stood, stopped cleaning, set down her cloth, and turned to me and smiled. "You always had a guardian angel watching over you, honey. I don't know if it was your father or not, but who or whatever it was, it made sure nothing bad ever really happened to you." As she turned around and began cleaning the dishes, she asked, "So I guess you met it then, right? Your spirit friend?" "Not exactly. He left something for me. I went upstairs, brought my laptop down, and showed her the letter on my computer. My mother was crying by the time she finished, and she told me all about my dad's friend. He was a kind boy. Mark brought him home one evening to meet me, and he had certain things about him. The man was as loyal as a dog to your father. He had a love and respect for him that even I was intimidated by at times. When he came to our home on leave, Marcus nearly had to order him to make himself at home, and he even had to be asked to take off his uniform. He looked up to Marcus almost like a boy looks up to his father. I don't really know his background, but I remember your father telling me that he was a good drinking partner, a fine soldier, and an invaluable friend." She took a deep breath and choked back a few tears before continuing on. "They found that poor boy and your father all alone in a building that had been overrun by the enemy. They had been out on recon, and their team got separated when they came under fire. The rest of the boys on your father's team survived, but those two weren't so lucky. The way they found them was peculiar." She swallowed heavily, looking at me right in the eye, and said, "The boy was found on top of your father, riddled with bullets. He was shielding him right up until the moment he died. He could have gotten away, but he refused to leave your father's side." With that, we both burst into tears. Love. That's exactly what he was. He was a guardian. I never had any reason to be afraid of him, and I had given anything just to tell him I was sorry and that I loved him back. I had no right to have done all of those terrible things I did to him at the end. I realized that he loved my father so much not even death could keep him from what he'd mentioned in the letter. When I asked what the promise was, my mother looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "It was made in this very house where they were setting up your room. It was just, no matter what happens, promise me you'll watch over my daughter." And that is the end of our Creepypasta Friday. It's kind of a sweet story, don't you think? Kind of wish I had a guardian angel ghost. Or maybe I do, and I just don't notice it. Maybe you do have one sitting in the dark corner of your room right now. If you like this story, let me know down below. And if you have one you'd like to see me read next, leave me a comment about it. And I'll see you guys all next time. Bye, everybody. Oh. Last one. Hi everybody, and welcome back to an exciting new episode of Creepypasta Fridays with your friend Mortimer. Today I have a new story to read with you guys, so get comfortable, sit in a dark room, pull a blanket up over you, and make sure you have headphones on, and let's get started. Today's story is called The Rake. During the summer of 2003, events in the northeastern United States involving a strange, human-like creature sparked brief local media interest before an apparent blackout was enacted. Little or no information was left intact, as most online and written accounts of the creature were mysteriously destroyed. Primarily focused in rural New York State, self-proclaimed witnesses told stories of their encounters with a creature of unknown origin. Emotions ranged from extremely traumatic levels of fright and discomfort to an almost childlike sense of playfulness and curiosity. While their published versions are no longer on the record, the memories remained powerful. Several of the involved parties began looking for answers that year. In early 2006, the collaboration had accumulated nearly 24 documents dating between the 12th century and present day, spanning 4 continents. In almost all cases, the stories were identical. I have been in contact with members of this group and was able to get some experts, from their upcoming book, The Rake, a suicide note from 1964. As I prepare to take my life, I feel it necessary to assuage any guilt or pain I have inducted through this act. It is not the fault of anyone other than him. For once I woke and felt his presence, and once I awoke and saw his form. Once again, I awoke and heard his voice, and looked into his eyes. I cannot sleep without fear of what I might wake up to next. I can never, ever wake. Goodbye. Found in the same wooden box were 2 empty envelopes addressed to William and Rose, and 1 loose personal letter with no envelope. Dearest Linny, I have prayed for you. He spoke your name. A journal entry, translated from Spanish, from 1880. I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I have experienced the greatest terror. I have seen his eyes when I close mine. They are hollow, black. They saw me and pierced me. His wet hand, I will not sleep. His voice, unintelligible text. A Mariner's Log, 1691. He came to me in my sleep. From the foot of my bed I felt a sensation. He took everything. We must return to England. We shall not return here again at the request of the Rake. From a witness in 2006. 3 years ago, I had just returned from a trip from Niagara Falls with my family for the 4th of July. We were all very exhausted after a long day of driving, so my husband and I put the kids right to bed, and I called it a night. At about 4 a.m., I woke up thinking my husband had gotten up to use the restroom. I used the moment to steal back the sheets, only to wake him in the process. I apologized and told him I thought he had gotten out of bed. When he returned to face me, he gasped and pulled his feet up from this end of the bed so quickly, his knee almost knocked me out of the bed. He then grabbed me and said nothing. After adjusting to the dark for a half-second, I was able to see what had caused the strange reaction. At the foot of the bed, sitting and facing away from us, there was what appeared to be a naked man, or a large, hairless dog of some sort. Its body position was disturbing and unnatural, as if it had been hit by a car or something. For some reason, I was not instantly frightened by it, but more concerned as to its condition. At this point, I was somewhat under the assumption that we were supposed to help him. My husband was peering over his arms and knee, tucked into the fetal position, occasionally glancing at me before returning to the creature. In a flurry of motion, the creature scrambled around the side of the bed and then crawled quickly in a flailing sort of motion right along the bed until it was less than a foot from my husband's face. The creature was completely silent for about 30 seconds, or probably closer to 5. It just seemed like a while. Just looking at my husband, the creature then placed its hand on his knee and ran into the hallway leading to the kids' rooms. I screamed and ran for the light switch, planning to stop him before he hurt my children. When I got to the hallway, the light from the bedroom was enough to see it crouching and hunched over about 20 feet away. He turned around and looked directly at me, covered in blood. I flipped the switch on the wall and saw my daughter, Clara. The creature ran down the stairs while my husband and I rushed to help our daughter. She was very badly injured and spoke only once more in her short life. She said, "He is the Rake." My husband drove his car into a lake that night while rushing our daughter to the hospital. He did not survive. Being a small town, news got around pretty quickly. The police were helpful at first, and the local newspaper took a lot of interest as well. However, the story was never published, and the local television news never followed up either. For several months, my son Justin and I stayed in a hotel near my parents' house. After we decided to return home, I began looking for answers myself. I eventually located a man in the next town who had a similar story. We got in contact and began talking about our experiences. He knew of 2 other people in New York who had seen the creature we now referred to as the Rake. It took the 4 of us about 2 solid years of hunting on the internet and writing letters to come up with a small collection of what we believed to be accounts of the Rake. None of them gave any details, history, or follow-up. One journal had an entry involving the creature in its first 3 pages and never mentioned it again. A ship's log explained nothing of the encounter, saying only that they were told to leave by the Rake. That was the last entry in the log. There were, however, many instances where the creature visit was one of a series of visits with the same person. Multiple people also mentioned being spoken to, my daughter included. This led us to wonder if the Rake had visited any of us before our last encounter. I set up a digital recorder near my bed and left it running all night, every night, for 2 weeks. I would tediously scan through the sounds of me rolling around in the bed each day when I woke up. By the end of the 2nd week, I was completely used to the occasional sounds of sleep, while blurring through the recording at 8 times the normal speed. This still took about an hour every day. On the first day of the 3rd week, I thought I heard something different. What I found was a shrill voice. It was the Rake. I can't listen to it long enough to even begin to transcribe it. I haven't let anyone listen to it yet. All I know is that I've heard it before, and I now believe that it spoke when it was sitting in front of my husband. I don't remember hearing anything at the time, but for some reason the voice on the recorder immediately brings me back to that moment. The thought that must have gone through my daughter's head makes me very upset. I have not seen the Rake since he ruined my life, but I know that he has been in my room while I slept. I know and fear that one night I'll wake up to him staring at me. Yeah, so that was the end of that story. I think it's actually quite spooky. It's weird to think of a dog-human hybrid naked and shivering, like as if it's been hit by a car, sitting at the end of your bed. But maybe you guys can picture that right now. If you guys like the story, let me know. Leave a comment down below. And I'll see you guys all next Friday with the next Creepypasta Friday with your good friend, Mortimer. I'll see you guys all then. Bye, everybody.